Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
He's in the building!
Drink the moment. Drink it.
I said empty your mind.
Coquettish and coy. Ow. Ow.
What?
And there's people that are dying.
The wickedly talented.
More than great. It was historic.
Crack is
World.
Oh, good for you.
I have to apologize.
One of the hottest. Hey, hotties, and welcome back to The Reheat, a podcast that re-examines the hottest celebrity news and scandals of yesteryear and asks, say it with me, how would we react to the same events if they transpired today? I'm your co-host, Sadaf.
And I'm your co-host, Sarah Sahagian, and this week we will be re-examining America's sweetheart, Reese Witherspoon. The actress went from upper-middle-class prep school girl to child actor to the star of box office hits like Legally Blonde and eventually to Academy Award winner. Few people in the history of entertainment have had as much success as Reese Witherspoon. In addition to the Oscar, I'm sure this dynamo polishes daily. Reese has produced such hit shows as the excellent Big Little Lies and the mediocre but highly watchable The Morning Show. In 2021, Reese sold her production company, Hello Sunshine, for $900 million. As if that weren't enough, Reese's influential book club has elevated the careers of such writers as Cecilia Ng and Taylor Jenkins Reid. Plus, she owns Draper James, a Southern-themed clothing store for women that looks like what would happen if Anthropologie hired Brie Vandekamp from Desperate Housewives to be its head designer.
That's so
if you
good,
know what
Sarah.
I mean, that's what I mean, right? Like, if you don't know what I mean, Google Brie's sweater sets. That's the vibe. That's Draper James.
It's perfection. Also, I'm shocked that Draper James is still going. Sorry, Reese, but I'm shocked.
Yeah, I am a little bit too, but I think in a certain section of the world, I guess people are buying it. I don't know anyone who shops there, but
Me either. But go Reese.
Exactly. Ann Taylor needs a competitor. So none other than Meryl Streep describes Reese in these words. She does everything. On top of the acting and producing and the books and Draper James, she also carves the pumpkins. She raises 3 kids. She maintains friendships. I know what it's like to be in this business and also raise kids. You remember that book, I Don't Know How She Does It? That's Reese. Steph, that's quite the endorsement.
Yeah,
Are you
seriously.
also a Reese fan? What does this icon of popular American cinema mean to you?
First of all, I'm so glad we're doing this episode. I have been divided over time. I used to be, I guess in some ways I still am a very big fan of Reese's because she's done so many great movies. So many great movies. I pretty much love her entire oeuvre, if you will. Election being my favorite. I just think she's such a phenomenal actor, and the way that she flipped her resume from kind of being a quirky, sort of lighthearted comedy heroine into being somebody who can do drama and pretty much anything, I really love and admire. And I love a woman who just takes her career into her own hands, especially with Hello Sunshine. However, perfect white women scare me, to be honest with you. And there's something about her where I feel like we don't know the whole story. We don't know the whole picture. She's kept a relatively pretty private personal life, and I want to know more. And I fear that there are things I don't want to know, but I feel like you're going to fill us in, Sarah.
Yeah, well, we're going to do a deep dive into the sour side of America's Sweetheart's life. So that's going to happen today.
Okay.
There's some unsavory parts. Because as poised and professionally successful as Reese is, there are some scandals. I mean, what Reese Witherspoon means to me is I don't think there's a celebrity with whom I have a stronger parasocial relationship. And I will explain why. I'm not saying that she is my favorite celebrity, but I definitely have, bizarrely, in my mind, this strong connection with her, and I'll explain. So let's start at the very beginning of Reese's life. The woman we know as Reese Witherspoon was born Laura Jean Reese Witherspoon. She later changed her name for show business. Her birthday is March 22nd, 1976, and that makes Reese exactly 1 decade older than I am because I was born on March 22nd, 1986.
Dun, dun,
So
dun.
she was born exactly a decade before me, and for whatever reason, that made her a very meaningful role model for me. Like, I find it very comforting that no matter where I am in my life, Reese is exactly 10 years ahead showing me the way and that I will survive, right? I've got this because Reese, she was also 38 at one point, right? Whatever age I am, Reese was that age 10 years ago.
Oh my God, I love that a lot. I got to figure out who my person is. Who is my 1 decade older celebrity figure? I love that. So you're always going to be okay if we're going by Reese's measure. Reese is never not going to be okay.
Well, exactly. Reese is a survivor. Reese can navigate any crisis.
Correct.
So growing up, having a teen idol who was precisely 10 years ahead of me always felt very comforting, right? So I discovered her when I was an early teen and she was a new adult, basically. And that was an immediate connection. Even before Legally Blonde made her a superstar, I knew she had the same birthday as me because of Entertainment Tonight, right? When they used to tell you the birthdays of celebrities.
I remember.
Right. And so I knew that. And I always was rooting for her. She was leading the way for me. She was also brought up Episcopalian, which is American for Anglican. And I was raised Anglican too.
Look at this.
She went to an all-girls school for high school, and so did I. So our parasocial relationship is very special to me.
You know what? This actually is so great because, and I say this with all respect and love, Sarah is a bit of a Tracy flick in some ways. Like, you're such a go-getter. You do it all. You're a hustler. Oh my God, I kind of see it.
I think she's more type A than me. I think she's more of a perfectionist.
Sure.
I am definitely a hustler. I think she's more of a perfectionist, right? We both work hard. I don't think we would get along. I think if I actually met this woman and she met me, we would not be friends. I don't think we have a lot in common.
I will add, if you were type A and you were more like Reese, I don't even think you and I would be friends.
Probably not, right? So I don't think Reese would be my friend, but for whatever reason, she's my parasocial friend.
I love this. I'm obsessed with this lore, Sarah.
So Reese wanted to be in show business from a very young age. In fact, she told people while growing up she wanted to be the next Dolly Parton.
Ooh.
Unfortunately, when she went to arts camp, they did not agree and told her that acting was her forte.
Wow, okay.
So Hollywood also thought Reese was a prodigious acting talent. As a 14-year-old, she secured her big screen debut in 1991's The Man in the Moon. A slew of other movies followed, with Reese doing a mix of teen movies and kind of more highbrow work, right? And I don't want to say it's more meaningful work because teen movies mean a lot to teens and also can be excellent. But she definitely had that mix. She didn't just want to be a teen idol, which was strategically probably very smart. For example, she starred in 1996's Fear, which is a cult classic about domestic violence, and also much better than a lot of more recent movies about domestic violence.
It is. And I know you're going to mention
better than It Ends With Us.
Definitely. It was a little more low-key, kind of.
Interestingly, it's a movie we almost didn't get because Reese spent a year studying at Stanford before dropping out to pursue acting.
Of course
Fear also includes a scene where Mark Wahlberg fingers her on a Ferris wheel. So there's that iconic cinematic moment. Take that, The Notebook.
Yes. Please, if you haven't watched Fear, go back and watch it just for that moment. Please, God.
Movies like Pleasantville and Cruel Intentions rounded out the 90s for Reese. But my personal favorite will always be Election, just like you, Sadaf. It's a complicated film where Reese plays Tracy Flick, a young woman who is sexually abused by one teacher, bullied by another, and learns the hard way that men will do anything to stop women from succeeding. So Reese was nominated for a Golden Globe for that performance, and Election won an Independent Spirit Award for Best Film. So Sadaf, you've already explained what your favorite Reese Witherspoon movie is, but what is your favorite movie from her teens and early 20s other than Election, right? So I know Election's your favorite, and it's mine too. What would be your second favorite?
First of all, I love that we have the same favorite because that just makes so much sense to me. Okay. I am going through her IMDb because she has such a long list and I genuinely could not remember if I didn't do that. Actually, let's take a look at how many she has. She has almost 70 credits, I think, if I'm not wrong here. There's so many things that I love. So I loved Pleasantville. Pleasantville was really I think key to me in so many ways. I think it's such a beautiful movie. It really holds up. It's like poetry. The cast is incredible. But I also really loved Cruel Intentions. Cruel Intentions was a little bit of a sexual awakening for me, as I'm sure it was for many others. And her and Ryan Phillippe in that movie are just so beautiful and young. And you're seeing them kind of have that big first moment where maybe they were falling in love the whole time. But I know you're going to fill us in. I think you just mentioned them, but I think those were my big ones, honestly. She had a really good string. She was also an American Psycho for like a brief cameo.
Yes.
I really loved. But there's too many to name. And of course, Legally Blonde. Her 20s and her teens were a good time for us all.
They were a great time for mainstream American cinema, I have to say.
Yes.
I mean, I know Election wasn't mainstream and Pleasantville was kind of borderline, but you know, she is a box office heroine who really elevated a lot of projects. And I do really believe that without Cruel Intentions, I think Cruel Intentions walked so Gossip Girl could run. I think that you don't get the Gossip Girl TV series if you don't have Cruel Intentions as proof of concept. Like, listen,
that
people
is Gossip
want
Girl.
We have a pitch for a reboot. We're going to do an episode on Gossip Girl.
We literally went on for 15 minutes before this episode, just teasing each other with it. But anyway,
it's fully realized. Like we've thought through every plot hole, so we can do it. We know we can. Please hire us. On her 21st birthday, Reese met teen idol Ryan Phillippe. So they were both teen idols together. During a 1998 interview with Jane Magazine, Reese said this: "I don't know what came over me. Maybe the 7 Maduri Sours, but I told him, I think you're my birthday present." And when she was 22, Reese and Ryan got a surprise when they found out Reese was pregnant with their first child. And no, it was not planned. In 2020, Reese told Drew Barrymore she was, quote, terrified when this happened and wasn't really sure how to balance work and motherhood. She said, "I didn't know if I was going to have a steady work too." Reese went on to explain, "I wasn't popular. Like, I made movies, but I hadn't established myself as someone who could demand that it shoot close to my kid's school. It didn't have any real power or leverage within my industry. So I think I was just like every other mom trying to figure it out, and dad and partner and grandparent who's raising a child." So Reese and Ryan got married in South Carolina when she was 5 months pregnant. Yes, they got married at a plantation, which is not a good look. That is what happened. Reese still managed to break out, though, even after giving birth. In 2001, she portrayed Elle Woods, a whip-smart sorority girl and fashion major from California who follows her ex to Harvard Law School in an attempt to win him back and discovers she prefers winning cases. The film grossed over $140 million, becoming an unlikely feminist classic. Legally Blonde also cemented Reese as a star. She was now frequently referred to as America's Sweetheart, a title she inherited from Meg Ryan, America's previous favorite perky blonde. Sadaf, what do you think makes someone America's Sweetheart? Is it different for every generation? What was the it factor that made Reese so damn lovable for millennials growing up?
Oh, what a fun question. And I got it. I mean, Meg Ryan is one of my all-timers. Yeah, definitely for a period there, you had to be blonde and you had to be perky. But I think just generally speaking, you've got to be charming and you've got to be able to laugh everything off. And you have to be someone who a typical straight man could fall in love with in 30 seconds, basically. Even though these women were marketed to women, that was kind of the whole spiel, right? You got to be cute. You got to look like you're never going to age. And yeah, you've got to be funny. You've got to be a lot of things, basically. And even when you cry, you look beautiful. You know, you don't have a Claire Danes cry. Sorry, Claire Danes. But everything you do is just so gently gorgeous. And these two, yes, absolutely. Did I love them that way? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I would say that that's all like exactly right on the money. I think that she was blonde. She obviously, it's not like she was a Meg Ryan lookalike, but a similar vibe, right?
Yeah.
Plucky, type A, right? There was this period where, and I think this falls into kind of sexist male fantasies, right? There's this post-feminist period. I mean, post-feminism is a controversial term, but this period in sort of the 80s and the 90s where some people believe the work of feminism was done. Obviously it wasn't. And women were now working and doing it all. And so if you want to have the male privilege of having a female partner who cooks you dinner and raises the kids and does all that stuff while she has a job, the only way to do this would be to have the most type A wife possible, right?
Yeah.
The only way you can do it all is to be incredibly type A. And even then, you'll probably burn out. But I think that's why the male fantasy evolved, because people look at women like Sally and When Harry Met Sally or Reese Witherspoon and they think, oh, she'd bring home money, but she'd also make me dinner.
Yes, exactly. There's kind of like a manic pixie element to it, isn't there?
Yeah. So I'm not trying to project that onto Reese, and that actually isn't who Meg Ryan is, right? Like, we don't know Meg Ryan was nothing like Sally and When Harry Met Sally. She's much more complicated and didn't necessarily always like being America's sweetheart. But I do think that was why the fantasy became, okay, here's this woman who enjoys doing it all. She'll work like 18 hours a day and still look fabulous and still make you dinner, and she likes it. That's who she is. That's who she wants to be. She won't complain.
But isn't the funny irony to it too? Because as you say that, I completely agree with you. But the irony is that they both often played characters who would probably chirp right back at that man and kind of say a cute little fuck you and be like, you can get your own dinner. That's the funny thing, right?
Yeah, I think so. But then the public persona Reese cultivated was very much somebody who would make you dinner.
You're right. You're right. That's the opposite, which I find so fascinating about her specifically. She's kind of the perfect all-American in real life, but the roles that she tends to pick still are not quite that. It kind of speaks all against that type.
It is interesting. She's a bundle of contradictions, and I mean, so are many female celebrities, right?
Yeah.
Like so are many female celebrities. So Reese has referred to her role as Elle Woods in Legally Blonde as the role of a lifetime. And it's certainly her most iconic character. I don't think anyone would disagree with that.
No.
But it wasn't just Reese whose life was changed. So she became America's sweetheart. But one really interesting thing about Elle Woods was that she inspired countless women, including me, to realize that being a girly girl didn't mean you were any less smart or capable. So there was a real feminist message from this movie, right? It was a movie that kind of reclaimed femininity and said, being a woman in this sort of traditionally feminine sense, not that you have to be traditionally feminine, but being traditionally feminine doesn't disqualify you from being smart. You can like pink and be smart, right? Don't let anyone tell you can't. So according to an article by Haley Moss in ABA Journal, this is a quote, "Years later, Elle remains influential for women entering the legal profession and women lawyers alike," which I think is really nice. I actually know of some women who decided they wanted to become lawyers because they saw Legally Blonde at a young age. And I think that's a really lovely legacy. What about you, Sadaf?
It makes me really happy. I mean, I think I've said this on the podcast before, but there's a high percentage reason that I became a journalist because of Rory Gilmore. So, like, listen, all American girls, like the girl next door, America's sweetheart, they have power on us women too. And I so deeply agree with that. My God, I mean, Elle Woods is one of the greatest characters of all time. And it's really interesting to me too, and so incredible that Reese has had so many amazing roles throughout her career. Like, what wealth, what creative wealth. But then at the same time, this particular character, I do think, rises among the rest. How special that she got to do it. And I have to say, and I'm sure some people will disagree with me, I don't think anyone else could have played that character the way that she did. It's just such a charming, funny role. And that's because of Reese. God bless.
It's her charisma. You have to have that charisma. And you also have to be believable as somebody who is super feminine, but also whip smart, right? Like a sorority girl who it has to be believable that she is intellectual enough that she can just pivot on a dime and decide to be a lawyer, right?
Yes.
And Reese is somebody who just comes off as so smart that, like, she could just completely change career paths and make it work.
Yeah, I believe it. She sells it to me. Yeah. I'm with you.
Yeah. So she just seems equally interested in fashion and the law, which is the character, right? Where she likes makeup and fashion and sparkles and loves her friends, but is also becomes equally obsessed with the law. And she sells it. Like, she sells this combination of interests that used to be seen as a bundle of contradictions. But I think thanks to Elle Woods, now we don't see those things as contradictory anymore. We don't see the idea that you want to go on spring break with your friends and wear a sparkly bikini as at odds with becoming a lawyer.
Not only that, but so it was 2001, right? Which is so early on for a movie where I believe it was the first time that I saw the lead female character who had a rivalry with another female character that we saw all the time. But what was different this time is they become friends by the end of the movie and they champion each other. That was the first time that I saw that. And then not only was that the first time I saw that, it was the first time I saw the lead character, a beautiful blonde white character, kind of say reject Warner, her male love interest, by the end and kind of be like, well, fuck you. My whole situation is actually better. I mean, obviously she got Luke Wilson in the corner too, but it wasn't about the guys, not in any way. And even when Warner kind of offers himself back up, she's like, actually, no thanks. All of that felt very revolutionary in 2001, I have to say, in terms of movies and in terms of comedies in particular. We never saw that.
No, and she doesn't need to change who she is to a man to the extent that actually she centers her career now, but she still actually finds a man who likes her for who she is, and because she's a character who does want to get married but also have a career, and she finds somebody who appreciates that about her, right? And I love that. Like, if she'd ended up alone, it still would have been fine. But what I like about her finding a man who loves that she is good at the law is it shows her that she didn't need to change at all, that she was perfect the way she was, and all of her dreams, which included both having a job and having a partner, can come true.
Oh my God, Sarah, I'm getting emotional. It's such a good movie.
I know, it's a great movie. It's a perfect ending. It's a great movie.
Yeah.
Love it. Like, feminist classic. Honestly, Private Benjamin for our generation.
Oh, yeah. I mean, please, I hope that it's never remade. Although, if it ever is, I will take a lesbian ending where
I'll take that too.
Selma Blair's. Yeah, give me that version. I'll take it.
Yeah, we'll take that too. I hope it's not remade. I think that you can't capture lightning in a bottle twice like that, in my opinion.
Although I have to ask you, Sarah, because Mindy Kaling has been working on a third one. I believe they've been working on. I don't know if it's been written or what's going on because it's not materialized yet. Do you want to see a third after all this time? Do you feel like it could still capture some of the lightning?
I don't know what there's left to say because even Legally Blonde 2 isn't good. So
no, it's not great. It's not great.
I don't know. I mean, maybe I would have to see the movie. I'm going to reserve judgment, but I think it's really hard because what makes that movie great is she has that arc where she realizes, oh, I can be passionate about more than one thing. I don't need to be with a guy who treats me badly. I can demand more from the world, right?
Yeah.
And by the time you get to Legally Blonde 2, it's not as interesting because she's already empowered. So literally she's trying to figure out how to empower her dog. And I love dogs, but that's not a great narrative.
That's so true. Yeah, you're right. It wasn't a very good narrative. I mean, listen, say what you will about Mindy Kaling. She writes a good comedy. So I feel like if it's in anyone's hands, I like it in Mindy's hands, but I still kind of feel like we don't need it. I don't know. I'm a little skeptical. Leave it as is, I'd say. But if it's going to happen, you and I will be at the theater first day.
I do think it's going to end up being a girl mom story. So I think
that's what I fear.
I think she's going to have a daughter. And I think so she's going to have to empower her somehow. Mindy Kaling has a daughter as well. So does Reese. Like, I feel like it's going to, this is just my instinct that it's going to end up being a girl mom story where Elle isn't at the forefront as much. And she's sort of passing the torch to the next generation. So we'll see. I mean, I don't even know if this movie's ever going to come out. Like, I actually think it's probably going to end up in development hell forever.
It could be, and Mindy never really told us what the gist of it would be. Also, I just want to clarify my groan because I'm certainly not anti-mom, but the only reason I kind of give that a groan is because, God, we've seen that happen so many times. I feel like so many times studios don't know what to do when it comes to a sequel or threequel that has a lead female character and time has passed and they just make her a mom, and then it's like, okay, let's see how she handles that and then how her kids follow suit in her trajectory. Give me something new. I'm happy to see her play a parent, but I don't want that to be the whole arc of the story because we've seen it. So, but let's see.
No, I know that. I just don't think that they can make it as compelling because she's already empowered, right? Like, I just don't know unless, I don't know, maybe she ends up on the Supreme Court And or it's about her confirmation hearings or something.
Actually, you know what? That was the rumor that she would end up on the Supreme Court, but I don't know that carried any weight to it. But I love that idea, Sarah. Now I'm
I think it has to be about the confirmation hearings, right? It needs to be about her striving to be there, and about maybe people not wanting to confirm her because they know about her sorority girl past and they're stereotyping her. It needs to be like that, I think.
Yeah.
Having said that, I'm still not sure there's enough there to make a movie.
There's not, but we'll watch it.
I'll watch it. I'll pay money.
Yeah.
Okay, so from Legally Blonde, Reese's career really took off. She became one of the highest paid actresses in Hollywood overnight. While she made $1 million for the first Legally Blonde, which is still fine, I would take that.
Yeah.
They gave her $15 million to do the sequel, and the paydays kept coming. But all was not fine in Reese's marriage. While they were now parents to 2 kids, both Ava and Deacon, Reese's career eclipsed Ryan's almost immediately. At the 2002 Oscars, they co-presented the award for achievement in makeup. And Ryan improvised a now infamous joke. As the couple were opening the envelope, Reese excitedly said, "Let me read it. Can I read it?" To which her husband responded, "You make more than I do. Go ahead." Reese has since said she did not know that would happen and was flummoxed by the joke, which is fair. I would have been flummoxed too.
Yeah.
Sadaf, why are men so threatened by women who are professionally more successful than they are? Because even for normies, couples are often likelier to divorce if the woman makes more money.
You know what? I'm not the best person to answer because in quite a few times the men that I've dated, this has been an issue. If I've been doing better than them, if I can afford more than them, because I have a career, because I've dated a lot of unemployed men. So I don't know. Because also we've seen this happen. And hey, there's that Oscar curse, right? I don't know if we've talked about that on the show before, but very often, and Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know if I'm going to get this right, but very often when a woman wins the Oscar, she and her husband will divorce or break up soon after she wins. And I believe the same thing happened between these two, but you'll take us there. But yeah, it just disappoints me. It really makes me sad. I think men, so many men, and certainly Western society still believes that men need to be the ones who are the breadwinners and they're bringing in more money and that's what their role is. And these two are in the public eye. So if that was an insecurity that Ryan had, it's probably magnified. And who knows, maybe somebody had made a joke to him more than a few times. It certainly sounds like he walked up on that stage with a little bit of bitterness. At the same time, I find it a little funny. Maybe it's a little too dark, though, and maybe I would have run it by Reese before he said it. So what do you think?
I would have let her know I was planning that joke. He want her to be in on it. Like, oh, we're making a joke about how you wear the pants in the relationship, you make more money. And you know what? I remember after that Oscars, many people saying that they were a golden couple because A, they looked amazing together, and B, it was the funniest joke of the night. And it actually, to be fair, was the funniest joke of the night. It wasn't a well-written Oscars that year, so it wasn't super funny. But that, to Ryan's credit, it was a funny joke, but now we know she wasn't in on it. It wasn't really a joke to him, right? We thought it was a joke, and actually he was taking a dig.
Yeah, can you imagine if let's imagine this happened now. If he made this joke at the 2024 Oscars 2025, he would have been like, he would have been torn apart. It's certainly a joke for the times. I would have laughed. I'm so sorry. I would have laughed. But absolutely, he should have given her a heads up. And I probably would have broken up with him the night after.
Pretty shocking. And I know it was a different time and it was a little bit more surprising at this time in history to have a woman out-earn her husband. But I thought the writers of the Oscars had written that joke for them. That's what I assumed happened at the time.
Right, but I guess not, right, of course.
But they didn't. That was just coming from his own bitterness.
Well, as Ryan has proved in the years since, he's not very funny, and there's a reason that his career has not even remotely caught up with Reese. He's not quite that talented. I'm sorry. He's a beautiful boy, though.
So at this time in her career, it wasn't just Mad Bank Reese was making, and this probably was also complicated for her marriage. She was getting clout as a performer and not just a seller of popcorn. In 2005, Reese portrayed June Carter Cash in Walk the Line, a biopic about Johnny Cash, for which Reese Witherspoon took home a Best Actress Oscar just days before her 30th birthday. Now, Reese was one of the highest paid actresses of her generation and among the most acclaimed. Soon, serious cheating rumors were swirling. Many tabloids and gossip blogs, including Canada's own LaineyGossip.com, accused Ryan of cheating with his Stop Loss co-star, Abby Cornish. The pair did go on to date after the demise of Ryan's marriage, but did they cheat? Both maintain they didn't, and Abby Cornish later told People magazine that being branded a homewrecker made it, quote, difficult for that time in her life. It also arguably tanked her career. I mean, do you want to play John Krasinski's occasional love interest on Jack Ryan? I don't think that's anyone's dream.
Is that what she's doing? I haven't heard about Abby Cornish in ages. I didn't even know she was still working. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, she pops up from time to time, but I think a lot of people like Reese and don't want to anger her. And I'm not saying Reese would be angry if you hired Abby. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I think maybe it has made her someone that people are nervous about consorting with. And maybe just like, maybe it's not even that they're worried about angering Reese. Maybe they just love Reese and they don't want to give a payday to someone they think hurt her. And I'm not saying we should be blaming Abby because she was not married to Reese. Ryan was married to Reese. But
I will add that it also probably has a lot to do with the fact that, and I'm so sorry, but let's be realistic here, Abby is not a very strong actor in any capacity. So perhaps we might say that Ryan was playing more along his own level. Good for him.
You're right. She's not a particularly good actress. So, she's a very pretty woman.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of really attractive people in Hollywood.
Yeah. I mean, good for her for even getting a role on Jack Ryan. I had no idea she was still getting a check. So good for you, girl.
Well, Reese filed for divorce in November of 2006, citing irreconcilable differences. And no one ever really explained the full reason for the split. But Reese and Ryan have both intimated in subsequent interviews that the biggest issue is they just got married too young. A decade later, after her divorce, Reese told Women's Health she's warning her daughter about early marriage, saying, quote, I've said to my daughter, I think, at 25, you start to know yourself a little bit better. So, I mean, she learned from her experience, right? And I don't know. When it comes down to it, I really do think that they were just too young and they tried to make it work. And it's sweet that they tried to make it work. But your brain isn't even fully developed until you're 25. So getting married at 23 because you got pregnant is just one of those things where, it's bound not to work out, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you. And plus they had kids when they started at 22, and that's a lot to have. Plus they're doing these both balancing careers where it's hard to have kids, it's hard to be married, it's hard to be in the spotlight at the very same time, it's hard to have the very same job. Honestly, I think it was set up for failure. I remember though when this happened, I was devastated because
so was I.
Yeah, we didn't know like all the negatives really, and they just were gorgeous together. They were a couple of the 90s of that era. I just loved them together. I was so sad about this. God.
When this happened, I told my gender studies study group, because we were studying for a final, I don't think I can believe in love anymore.
Oh, I'm sure I said the same thing. We all used to make that declaration back then.
I know, because they broke it up. I can't believe in love.
My God. Well, listen, I said the same thing when Brittany and Justin broke up, and that was diluted. So clearly we didn't know what we were talking about. Everyone's better off.
Yeah, I mean, Reese and Ryan were definitely, it was just never going to work. And I think when they got divorced, I was not that much younger than they were when they got married. I was about 22, so that I was 20, so that's not much younger. And I guess in my head, I thought of myself as an adult, and now in retrospect, I was not an adult when I was 20. So I understand why people who got married in their early 20s did not make it work. I get that.
Oh my God, yeah. I was such an idiot and a child. I can't imagine having kids. But let me just add, because this is something I've thought about these two for so long. But their daughter in particular, but both of their children together look so much like them. And I often wonder, what the hell is that like when you aren't have your weekend or your week with the kids and you have to look at your child who is the spitting image of your ex? Because I have to say, Ava specifically, their daughter, looks so much like Ryan and yet so much like Reese. Like, it's insanity. What the hell is that like?
Yes, that must be challenging. I do believe they're good parents. Their kids seem to have turned out well. I do believe that they are good parents, that they manage the divorce as well as you possibly can manage a divorce. One thing I always liked about Ava is that Reese made her get a summer job. She worked at Chris O'Donnell's pizza place.
I didn't know that. Okay, well,
yeah, she's a good parent. She went to Berkeley. I think they raised their kids really well. Like,
Yeah.
as far as Hollywood goes, I think they gave them good values. I think they seem pretty normal and pretty accomplished. So kudos for that. And like, listen, it's hard to make a marriage work at the best of times, but they got married. Who knows if they would have gotten married had she not gotten pregnant, right?
Yeah.
I do think it's sweet that they decided, okay, since we're going to have the baby, like, let's try to make it work. It's a little bit naive, but it is sweet that they decided to put in the effort, but
I
it
feel
didn't work
like,
out.
yeah, you know what though? I remember thinking, and I still think this, but it made me feel like they're so normal because they did that, and also how very Southern that they decided to make that move. It felt very relatable in a way.
I remember my mother thinking it was really cute. Like, I remember us reading People magazine about their marriage, and they were getting married, and Reese like looked adorable. She was 5 months pregnant, and my mom was like, "Oh, I hope it works out for them. Like, good for them. They seem like sweet, nice young people. Good for them." Like,
well, also back then, and this is not a dig on now. I just want to make this point, but everybody really looked so much younger than they actually were. Like Reese and Ryan looked like babies. They looked so fresh and just out of the womb themselves. So it was like, yeah, you just wanted to root for these two kids. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely wanted to. This is at the time. Okay, so I was very slightly pregnant when I got married. Very slightly. I had already planned the wedding, but I was very slightly pregnant when I got married, for various reasons. Anyway, I knew as a child for some reason, and I was a late bloomer, so there was no reason to believe this would happen to me. But when I saw Reese Witherspoon was pregnant when she got married, I was like, that's going to happen to me.
Yeah.
I'm going to be pregnant when I get married. And I don't know why. I just knew that would happen. Because Reese was 10 years ahead and it happened to her.
Oh my God, you two are fated. This is so endlessly fascinating to me.
I don't know why. And I didn't get married till I was 33. So I was 10 years older. So maybe I learned from her divorce. But I just knew. I was like, because both my childhood role models, Reese Witherspoon and Anne Boleyn, were pregnant when they got married.
Reese and Anne Boleyn.
Protestant childhood role models. I love a Protestant girl who gets things done.
I feel like this is a YA novel you have to write, but also clearly like you are the refined Reese because you kind of correct each one of her little missteps. Okay, so as we keep going, we're going to learn your future, but like 10 years later.
Maybe.
Evidently. Okay.
Because I have to say, Reese takes a turn that I actually think makes a lot of sense. All right, so now I think it's time for a break before we go on to talk about Reese's life post-divorce. Now we're back, and you can't keep Reese down. After a high-profile relationship with Jake Gyllenhaal that corresponded with his peak hotness years, so good for Reese, Reese did the practical thing a money-loving Aries does. She married her agent, Jim Toth. Because why not keep that 10% and turn it into marital assets you get half of in the event of a divorce? Genius.
Absolutely.
Genius.
Yes, I'm with you on that. Yeah,
what?
definitely.
Like, no, it's brilliant. You know what? If you like your agent and you think he's cute, why not fall in love with him, right?
Amen. Co-signed.
I mean, he wasn't her agent when she met him, but when you meet him and you find out he is a super agent, you're like, well, I could fall in love with you and you could be my agent. Like,
it's kind of perfect.
It's brilliant. It's so smart, right? And then he wants her career to succeed because then his career succeeds, right? It's the opposite of Ryan.
Okay, so this fixes the whole drama. Okay,
exactly. Like, it's
this
so strategic. It's so smart.
This is good.
She and Jim had another son, Tennessee, and Reese got really passionate about producing. Over the years, she has produced a ton of projects, from forgotten gems like the fabled Penelope to Emmy-winning Big Little Lies. But trouble comes for everyone, sooner or later. In 2013, Reese's husband, Jim, was pulled over in Atlanta, Georgia, under suspicion of driving under the influence. Reese did not care for this, and while the state trooper had only requested that Jim, the driver, get out of the car, she came out on her own and gave the most iconic Karen speech anyone has ever given, telling the arresting officer, quote, "I am a U.S. citizen. I am allowed to stand on American ground."
Oh, no. God.
Yeah.
That sounds so much like something you would hear now every day, which is crazy.
It sounds a bit MAGA.
Yeah, yeah.
It does. So eventually, the state trooper handcuffed Reese and pointed out that she was interfering with a DUI arrest, and that's like obstruction of justice. That's a crime. So when he points that out to her, Reese is offended and asks if he knows her name. He does not.
And you know what? To be fair, he should. Okay,
He should have. That was a little bit weird to me because at that time she was one of the most recognizable women in the world, right?
Maybe he was lying. He didn't want to give her the credit.
I actually think he probably was.
Yeah.
I think he was probably lying to, because also if he's like, I know you're Reese Witherspoon, where does that go from there, right? Like, I think he's just trying to arrest her as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, definitely. It makes sense.
Yeah, like, you know what? I have a lot of problems with the state of modern policing, but arresting people for DUIs is one of the few things where I'm like, yeah, that needs to happen because they're so dangerous. That's one of the few things where I'm like, yes, I'm on your side, officer, if you're arresting someone for a DUI and they actually deserve the DUI.
Yeah.
And in this case, she was obstructing justice, right? He's just trying to arrest someone for a DUI.
Making it even worse.
Yeah, exactly. So when he said he didn't know her name, Reese declared, "You're about to find out who I am."
Oh, God, Reese. Jesus Christ. What the hell were they drinking?
I don't know. Too much,
Yeah,
whatever it was. You can still watch the video on TMZ, which ends with Jim Toth apologizing for his wife. And he says, "I'm sorry, I had nothing to do with it."
Oh my God. The fact
and
that
basically the state trooper is like, "Yeah, man, I know. Like, this woman is out of control." And normally I would find comments like that sexist, but she was out of control. Like, absolutely, Jim Toth, who's just trying to get through this DUI that he does deserve, is like apologetic. It's like, oh my God, why is she making this worse?
Even Omar is like, that's enough. No, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's really embarrassing. Like, the point is, when you get a DUI, most people who get a DUI describe that as one of the low points of their lives, right? Because not only are you having trouble with the law, but it also signals to you, you probably have a drinking problem, right? So it's a real low point. It is rock bottom for most people. But the fact that clearly that was not the most upsetting part of the night, like his wife's behavior was, it says something, right? Where it's like, oh, my rock bottom is actually when my wife got out of the car and got arrested too for being...
It's so embarrassing. Oy.
Yeah, it's really embarrassing.
Yeah.
So the news of America's Sweetheart's arrest was everywhere. Yes, millions of people watched the TMZ video of her arrest, but highbrow publications like The Guardian and The New York Times were all over it too. Reese quickly released a statement apologizing for her behavior. The statement read, "I clearly had one drink too many, and I am deeply embarrassed about the things I said. I was definitely in a scary situation, and I was frightened for my husband, but that is no excuse. I was disrespectful to the officer who was just doing his job. I have nothing but respect for the police, and I'm very sorry for my behavior." So, Sadaf, why was this such a big news story? Do you think it was Schadenfreude, or do you think that we actually felt disappointed in the valedictorian of Hollywood High? Because that's kind of what she was, if we use the high school metaphor for Hollywood.
Absolutely. I remember when this happened. It was insane. We were all talking about it at school the next day. Like, it was crazy. I was very disappointed, but also, it's not fair to hold anybody, especially someone you don't actually know, to such a high measure when you don't know them. At the same time, though, someone getting a DUI, that is pretty disappointing, just generally speaking. And then somebody else who jumps in and is like, "I'm an American. Don't you know who I am?" It's like also horrendous, whether I know you or not. Like, that's just obvious. So I think that was more my thing, where I was like, oh no, she's one of those. She has an ego. She's like probably a crazy psycho Republican. Like, it was a lot of realizations that may not be true, but that's where my brain jumped, and that's what I still fear today.
She sounded like a Republican. Like, that's the way Republicans speak. And also there are lots of Republicans who wouldn't say that. That's the way like MAGA people speak. Like, and it also is kind of enabling. Like, if your spouse gets a DUI, okay, there's a good chance they have a drinking problem, and then to go out and try to use your fame to get them out of it is enabling. And then what happens if they get another DUI and someone dies next time, right? That doesn't help anyone.
I would hope that I would not even be in that car with that person, or B, I would have tried to get them to stop, or C, I would have shut my mouth and been like, thank God you're getting arrested, sir. You deserve this. But clearly they were both very inebriated. This woman was not in her right mind.
No, and they're rich people. Why don't you hire someone to take you home? Right? Like, I don't understand. Like, DUIs happen because people don't have the money to like call a cab or, things like that. Like, why is he driving at all ever?
That's such a good point. I always forget about that with celebrities. Like, honestly, if it were me, I'd have a driver all the time. And before anyone jumps in and says, you don't know how much celebrities make. Okay, well, we know that Reese makes a lot, okay? And this man was her agent, so they were loaded. They could have easily called a cab.
No, these people were super rich. Anyone who says that about celebrities, first of all, almost every celebrity you know about, unless something really exceptional happened, like they got scammed out of their money a la Allison Janney a while ago, they have the money to call a cab.
Yeah.
And I also don't think Allison Janney would ever have told you she didn't have the money for a cab, right? I don't think she ever would have claimed that, even when she was scammed. I don't think she would have been like, I can't call a taxi when I'm drunk, right? Like, I don't think she would have said that.
That's also true. I hope not. God, I also have so much respect for Allison Janney. Knock on wood. God.
Yeah. So it's ridiculous. Like,
it is.
Sure. When you judge a celebrity for, not giving I still kind of judge Mandy Moore for the fact that she won't give her brother-in-law $60,000.
I forgot about that. She's
cab
also
is
getting
like
heat recently for having GoFundMes for her family as the LA fires happen.
Yeah, absolutely. But a cab is like $20. So
yeah,
if Mandy Moore told me she couldn't afford a cab,
I'm concerned.
Be like, I would scoff.
But you know what? I will say she is doing the This Is Us podcast, and doing a This Is Us podcast when the show ended, like a year or two ago, is cause for concern. So, who
maybe
knows?
she got scammed out of her money too. Like, that is possible. We haven't heard that story, but maybe that's the issue. But still, anyway, all celebrities you know of have cab money, right?
Yeah.
They all have taxi money, right?
Yes, they do.
Right? Like, your friend who works as a nurse has taxi money. Reese Witherspoon has taxi money, right?
Also, by the way, let's say they don't, or whatever. If your friend is inebriated, call them a cab, call them an Uber yourself. Okay, it's just the decent thing to do, because you don't know how that's going to end, what turn it's going to take. I mean, not to turn this into a PSA, but I don't know. DUIs make me very angry. So
yeah,
disappointed in you, Reese and Jim.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think it's time for another break, and then we'll talk about how Reese survived that scandal. Well, Reese survived the snafu. She paid a fine for her actions and went on with her life. In fact, the following year, after her husband's DUI and her arrest, she had a full-blown renaissance. She was nominated for an Oscar for her performance in Wild, and in 2017, she started her now famous book club. And as a producer, she rebranded herself as something of a feminist advocate. After getting a slew of bad scripts she didn't like, Reese decided to tell stories about women's lives that weren't just romantic comedies. Her production company, Hello Sunshine, explicitly focused on telling women's stories, which she iconically said on The View is because women's stories matter. They just matter. So, Sadaf, why do you think Reese was able to overcome her DUI? Do we think it's just a combination of her privileges, being rich, being white, and being pretty? Or do you think it was something else? I'm reminded of Katherine Heigl, who, like Reese, was blonde and beautiful and talented, but was canceled for having opinions, which is far less offensive than obstruction of justice.
God, I mean, has anyone suffered more than Katherine Heigl? I don't know. But excellent question. My God, I think it's all of the above. Reese is definitely beautiful and white and rich and has all of the things, and was already at the top of the totem pole in Hollywood. So she was kind of in the best place to do something like this, where she wouldn't be knocked off too far. However, I think if this happened now, it would definitely be a disaster for her. The internet wasn't as savvy at the time. They weren't as ruthless. But also, I have a feeling that not everybody knew that this happened. I think for those of us who were very online, who followed the tabloids and gossip knew that it happened, but I guarantee you, I think actually even at the time when I brought it up with some friends, they had no idea what the hell I was talking about. And if it was Reese who had gotten the DUI, maybe that would have been different. I don't know, but I also just think she was, and I think she still is, too big to fail. But it was also a different time, even though it wasn't even 10 years ago. But I am really amazed at the way that her biggest moment came right after. I mean, it really is kind of iconic that she took this horrible moment that made her look like a really selfish, awful woman, and then kind of rebranded. I don't even want to say rebranded, because I kind of already saw her as such a feminist figure, but kind of went full hardcore into, I'm a feminist, and I believe in women writers and women filmmakers, and I'm going to work with them, and it's kind of the best thing to do, really. I don't think that she should have taken herself out of the industry, but putting other people forward and launching them and putting all of these stories out there, bringing other actors forward, other directors, other writers, it's kind of the best thing. I mean, I love that she does that. It's hard to argue, really. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I do think leaning into feminism was strategic. So actually, to give Reese credit, she was the first celebrity I ever saw call herself a feminist. She did it before it was cool. In interviews I read with her in the early 2000s when I was a teen, she basically said, like, I'm a serious feminist, right?
Yes.
And she didn't really explain what she meant by that, but having seen Legally Blonde, I do think she believed in empowerment, and she believed in fighting gender stereotypes and fighting sexual harassment and things like that. Like, I do think that she wanted to participate in projects like that. Like, even Election too is such a powerful commentary on how much men hate women, right? Even like little girls, because Tracy Flick is a teenage girl. She's not even an adult, right? And everyone wants to keep her from succeeding. Well, all the men want to keep her from succeeding. So I do believe she is a feminist. She might also have MAGA instincts, right? Like, I do. And they might be dueling it out inside of her, right?
Yeah.
Like, when she gets drunk, there is definitely a little bit of MAGA in her, it seems. Like, that comes out when she's drinking. But I do think she leaned into the best part of herself and the most successful, the most iconic, which is feminist icon Reese, right? From Legally Blonde. And she's also a smart lady and a businesswoman, and she was able to produce projects. She understood that there was an appetite for projects where men were the villains and the problems of women's lives. I also think this corresponds with when her marriage started to fail, because if you look at the Hello Sunshine projects, she's always adapting books where, like, the husband is the source of all your problems. Like,
exactly.
So it's not
She's
surprising.
sending a subliminal message, or not really?
Yeah, it's not surprising her marriage didn't work out. I'm just saying, right? Like, every Reese show that you watched on Apple or whatever, it was like, your husband is the problem. Your husband is the problem. That was what I was telling women.
Also, I do want to clarify her politics. And, again, like, celebrities can say one thing publicly and maybe they're doing something else in the voting booth. But she has been very staunchly Democrat for years. Yes, she was very much on Obama's side. Michelle and Barack, she recently endorsed Kamala Harris. She talked a lot about how everybody needs to get out and vote. So, you know what? Maybe it was just that night was this terrible Southern moment where she said something. She's just a patriot, and Sarah and I are not big fans of patriotism, but I'm gonna give her the benefit of the doubt. I don't know.
You know what? I think what happens sometimes is your upbringing comes out at inconvenient times and doesn't necessarily reflect your values. So she would have grown up with a lot of this rhetoric, right? Anyway, I just feel like Reese can do a little bit more to really live her feminist politics, right? And prove that they're not just a business strategy. That is my opinion.
I completely agree. And also, I mean, this might be a little bit of nitpicking, but I would love to see her put forward some more diverse women in her book club, and also with the books that she adapts. She's been doing it a little bit here and there, and I have looked at the statistics because I've actually wondered about this with Hello Sunshine. And also because she is, I will say, to her credit, she is one of the few Hollywood producers who make such a concerted effort to put more women in those seats and have them make those decisions. So I don't want to rag on her too much when it comes to that.
I don't know. You know what? I shouldn't either.
No, I don't think you're wrong though, because there's always a question if it's just the tool that's being used to market all of this work and to add more to her cachet and to build her empire even more. And maybe I'm just a little weak and I've been caught up in it and I buy it all, but I don't know. I want to believe that it's truthful and it's honest. And also I just love all of the stuff that she's put out there pretty consistently. I've liked a lot of what she's done, but I don't know. I'd like to see more diversity, which, by the way, I'm sure she's going to do, and I'm sure she's working on it because there has been a little here and there. Let's do even more, Reese. Come on.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I like that she's encouraging people to read, right? I mean, I think we do. Truth be told, we know that influential celebrities can get people to read. And I would say at the moment, her celebrity book club is the best of the ones we have right now.
It's pretty good. By the way, might I, because I just actually incidentally bought a Reese's Book Club book. I bought R.F. Kuang's Yellowface, who is an Asian writer. So I hope she's adapting it because it's a gorgeous book so far. It's a controversial one too. But anyway, fun fact and realization I had when I bought this book, if it has Reese's Book Club stamped on it, it's actually a little cheaper than if it doesn't have her book club stamped on it.
Really?
Because I guess some people like to have like an original copy. They don't want the sticker. I wonder if that happens with Oprah's book club too. I'm willing to bet not, but I don't know. But anyway, there you go. If you are a reader, you can save a little by buying the ones that have Reese's sticker on them. Did I buy the one with Reese's sticker? You bet I did. I saved a couple dollars. You
Save
bet
the
I
money.
did.
Wear it proudly. Like there's no shame in taking reading recommendations from Reese Witherspoon.
No, they're good. Most of them are quite good, I will say.
Yeah. And you know what? She is a lifelong reader. I do believe she reads most of the books. I don't know if she reeds them all. I do believe
I'm sure she does. And she does have a team, but I do think she's a reader, and I love seeing a reader in Hollywood actually make decisions. It's nice.
And I also like that she isn't pretentious. Like, she likes well-told stories, and some of the things she picks are very literary, but she also likes a good thriller. And I'm a woman who enjoys a good thriller. So good for you, Reese.
I think she knows what will sell. I think she knows that thrillers sell. I think she knows that soft paperbacks sell. I think she knows that books with women in the lead who have like silly, goofy lives sell. I love that. Because I think that, you know, that's not always what I want to read, but sometimes it is. And for other people, that's exactly what they love. You mentioned Taylor Jenkins Reid. I mean, she's become even bigger now thanks to these adaptations. And that's what so many women readers love. It's so beautiful to see female readers be kind of the core demographic that someone is looking at. I love that.
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, what she's done for the publishing industry is great, because the truth is it's struggling. And so any high profile celebrities who want to encourage people to read books are welcome, right? That is helpful. I'm totally on side about that. No, overall, I really like what Reese has done in her career. There are some moments like obstruction of justice that are very embarrassing.
They're horrible. My God.
Yes, that are very embarrassing. And there are some times where I think that, like, yes, I do think she is a feminist. I do agree. I think she is, because she said she was a feminist before it helped you. Before it helped you, right? It wasn't cool when she said she was a feminist. So I do believe that. I do sometimes wonder if feminism is the most important part of her identity, or maybe if it's just like, I'm a happy capitalist. But you know what? If a feminist capitalist is better than an anti-feminist capitalist.
I think that's actually the perfect place to end, because I think that is what she is. She is a capitalist. She's also a feminist. And maybe capitalism comes out on top because she is using feminism to a degree to sell books, and to sell movies and TV shows. But hey, it's better than kind of going in the reverse, and where things were just a couple decades ago when an actor like her could not get better roles because they did roles like those. Now she's capitalizing on those characters, and I kind of love that. So I don't know, there's wins and losses here, but overall I see a net win. Definitely for me.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I see
the
a
woman
net
is
win.
loaded. She's fine.
Oh, she's fine.
She's so fine. She's always gonna be fine.
Reese is completely fine. Yes. You know what? You can also read her memoir, Whiskey in a Teacup, which is fairly charming.
I forgot that.
Yeah, I read it as preparation. It's interesting. It's a lot of tips on how to entertain people and how to live like a fabulous Southern life. And she does suggest that you use rollers to do your hair. And I haven't tried it yet, but I've seen a lot of people doing it online. And it seems like the simplest and most effective way to do your hair. So we should bring that back.
I've heard about that. That's actually better. So, okay, I'll take it, Southern lady. All right.
Yeah, no, I mean, she does have some good actionable advice. She also loves Steel Magnolias, and she basically says all you need to do to understand acting is to watch that movie.
Yes. Yeah. I
Yeah,
love
so
that movie. God. Oh,
yeah, great movie. No, she has good taste. I do believe she's a great hostess. I would love to go to a party at her house. FYI,
yes.
she has a famous Christmas party where she says that Neil Patrick Harris and Kate Hudson are some of the best singers who attend. They sing Christmas carols.
I don't know if I want to hang out with Neil, but I'll hang out with Kate.
I'll hang out with Kate.
Yeah.
Maybe she'd give me free leggings. Like, I'm down.
Yes, I'm into that.
Well, so today Reese is still doing what Reese does best. She's working. Her new romantic comedy, You Are Cordially Invited, will debut on Netflix. On January 30th. In it, she plays opposite Will Ferrell, and I think they look cute together.
They are cute, and I love Will Ferrell. I love it.
After watching any of the thrillers that Hello Sunshine produced, as I said earlier, you will not be surprised that she and her husband divorced. They are no longer together, she and Jim Taw. And now it is time for Hindsight is 2025, the segment where Sadaf and I discuss what we would have handled differently if we were the subject of today's episode.
I shouldn't have done that.
Sadaf, you're up.
Okay, so obviously the patriotism would be the thing that I would say, but it's too obvious. So I'm going to go with something a little different because I also just wanted to talk about this more. I wish that she and Jake Gyllenhaal had remained an item. Like, if it couldn't be Ryan Phillippe, and it shouldn't have been because I don't think they worked out, but although I did love them when I was younger, I loved her and Jake together. I loved them. And I also loved Jake with Kirsten Dunst, but if we couldn't even have that, and I love Kirsten Dunst with Jesse Plemons, so go with me on this. He and Reese Witherspoon, I loved them. They could have stayed together. They could have been a beautiful couple. They could have been a power couple. She could produce the movies he's in. Like, it could have been amazing. I wish that had happened and that had lasted a little longer. I really wanted that. That's all.
So I think
Sarah
mine is obviously, I don't think she should have obstructed justice.
Of course not.
Mine is obviously that I don't think she should have obstructed justice. But having said that, I will go with another one that's a bit less obvious, which is when she found out she was pregnant, she didn't have to get married, right?
Oh,
They
that's
could have
good.
just lived together and co-parented for as long as the relationship lasted. Like, I mean, I understand they wanted to have the baby, and I support that decision, but that doesn't mean you have to get married, right?
Yeah.
Because clearly they were not sold on getting married 100%,
No.
right? And I think that put a lot of pressure on them. They were doing what I think they were raised to believe was the right thing to do, which was not necessarily the right decision for them as people. So,
but
you know,
I mean, counterpoint, because again, it was the early OOs.
Yeah.
Who knows how she would have been treated by the media if she hadn't gotten married and had a child out of wedlock.
that is true. She probably would not have become a star in the same way.
She wouldn't be
so
America's
maybe
sweetheart, I don't
strategically, and Reese is very strategic. So
Yeah.
I feel like that might have been at the back of her mind, like, I have to get married. And
I
then,
think they probably definitely had some agents in there kind of helping them figure out how to navigate. You can't be America's sweetheart and have a child out of wedlock, at least not back then.
and even now, not in the same way.
Yeah,
You
not
wouldn't
in the
be
same way.
America's mainstream sweetheart. It's one of those things where it's getting married when you're pregnant, I would say, at this point in history, because this is something that people have always done. Like, a lot of people think that 300 years ago, people were not pregnant when they got married. They were almost more likely to be pregnant when they got married, right? Like, it was so many people got pregnant. We just don't have photographs from that time period.
Yeah.
So many people were pregnant when they got married. In the time of George Washington, like, a huge percentage. I think I heard one historian estimate 1 in 3 women were pregnant when they got married in the time of George Washington.
And you know why? Because birth control was not a thing. So it's just logic.
Birth control was not a thing. And also another thing is once people got engaged, they just started
free for all,
right? Because they're like, well,
Yeah.
we're getting married anyway, right?
Yeah.
Like, that was a thing people did. So I think there is one of those things where it's like, in our society, a lot of people, even socially conservative people, will sort of not, as long as you get married, they don't judge you for conceiving before marriage. I mean, there's some people who do, but I think a lot of people are like, oh, good, you made it right. You made the right decision. And so I actually think that probably gave her a lot of cred with conservatives. I think that made them like her more than if she had just gotten married and then 3 years later gotten pregnant.
I think so too. And maybe that's what all of this was all along. That she was actually, this great liberal Democrat, one of us. And then she would find these key moments where she would also remind the other side of the aisle that, hey, wink, wink, I'm still one of you too. So she could
I
pressure
share
her
your
audience.
values, right? And I'm not trying to say that only a Republican would keep an unplanned
No,
pregnancy.
God,
I'm not
no.
trying to say that at all. But like, yes, there is this. She is a bit of a cipher, right? Like you can say like, oh, that's my value. If if I got pregnant outside of wedlock, I would just get married and not have an abortion, right? Like, so I do think that she kind of. And this is a completely personal decision. I'm not trying to say that she had her daughter because she wanted Republicans to like her. I would never, ever say that.
Yeah. No, God, no.
But I do think it helped, actually.
Yeah, I think so too.
So that brings us to the end of the episode. Thank you to our wonderful listeners. You can listen to The Reheat for free on the Seeker app. You can also find the show on the Frequency Podcast Network or wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to hear more from me, you can find me on Instagram at Sahagian Sarah. And Sadaf, where can our listeners find you?
Listeners can find me at _Sadaf Hassan. And if you liked this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe so other listeners can find us too. And if you'd like us to keep growing, which I know that you do, we'd love for you to support us and subscribe on Patreon at patreon.com/The Reheat. There's so much good stuff over there for you guys. Come check it out. And thanks for listening. Go watch Fear.